So I'm just sharing my screen. And so we're picking up from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 14. And today we'll be covering text number 3. I'll just say, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'll read the Sanskrit, the word for word and translation and purport. Kalasya cha gatim raudram viparyastartu dharmina papiyasim nrinam vartam krodalobanritatmanam. Word for word. Kalasya, of eternal time. Cha, also. Gatim, direction. Raudram, fearful. Viparyasta, reversed. Ritu, seasonal. Dharmina, regularities. Papiyasim, sinful. Nrinam, of the human being. Vartam, means of livelihood. Krodha, anger. Lobha, greed. Anrita, falsehood. Atmanam, of the people. Translation. He saw that the direction of eternal time had changed, and this was very fearful. There were disruptions in the seasonal regularities. The people in general had become very greedy, angry, and deceitful. He saw that they were adopting foul means of livelihood. Purport. When civilization is disconnected from the loving relation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, symptoms like changes of seasonal regulations, foul means of livelihood, greed, anger, and fraudulence become rampant. The change of seasonal regulations refers to one season's atmosphere becoming manifest in another season. For example, the rainy seasons being transferred to autumn, or the fructification of fruits and flowers from one season in another season. A godless man is invariably greedy, angry, and fraudulent. Such a man can earn his livelihood by any means, black or white. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, all the above symptoms were conspicuous by their absence. But Maharaj Yudhishthira was astonished to experience even a slight change in the godly atmosphere of his kingdom. And at once he suspected the disappearance of the Lord. Foul means of livelihood implies deviation from one's occupational duty. There are prescribed duties for everyone, such as the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. But anyone who deviates from his prescribed duty and declares another's duty to be his own is following a foul and improper duty. A man becomes too greedy for wealth and power when he has no higher objective in life and when he thinks that this earthly life of a few years is all in all. Ignorance is the cause for all these anomalies in human society. And to remove this ignorance, especially in this age of degradation, the powerful sun is there to distribute light in the shape of Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, in the last chapter, we had heard about Vidura convincing Dhritarashtra to quit home and take up the process of self-realization. And Narada then explains how Dhritarashtra, how he spent his final moments along with his wife, attaining a form of self-realization. So in this chapter, we're now hearing about the symptoms that appeared that indicated that Krishna had left this world. So Arjuna has gone to Dwaraka, and Yudhishthira is starting to see some irregularities in nature and in the way that people are acting and different symptoms that are appearing in front of him. And we will read how he'll question Arjuna when he's coming back, when he comes back. And it's almost like Yudhishthira Maharaj knows what's happened, but he doesn't want to accept it. So he asks so many different questions to Arjuna. But here we're just seeing Yudhishthira Maharaj explaining some of these symptoms that he's beginning to see that indicate that something inauspicious has happened. So just highlighting some of the main points from the purport that Prabhupada brings out. So he starts to comment on the change of season, and in the translation it says there were disruptions in the seasonal regularities. And Prabhupada explains how the change of seasonal regulations refers to one season's atmosphere becoming manifest in another season. So when I read that, I immediately, that's literally what climate change is, or global warming, however you refer to it. But the characteristics of one season appearing in a different season is a side effect of climate change. And so we always say that climate change is a result of pollution, the ocean temperature rising, so many side effects that are human made. But even, if we want to take it back to the root of its cause, it is a godless civilization. And we can say that according to this statement. And basically, if the society operates with God consciousness, there are so many side effects of that lead to a harmonious natural circumstance. So when the society operates without God consciousness, then there are so many side effects that lead to unnatural circumstances such as climate change. So that's one aspect of these irregularities that Yudhishthira Maharaj is seeing that Prabhupada is commenting on. Also, he says that a godless man is invariably greedy, angry, and fraudulent. Invariably greedy, angry, and fraudulent. And I looked up the word invariably. Let me see if it shows up here. Invariably means in every case or on every occasion, always. That's a very heavy word. So Prabhupada is saying that every living entity that is not a worshiper of God is greedy, angry, and fraudulent by default. And this can be, this is a very heavy statement because, we meet, how many people do we meet in the world that perhaps are not worshipers of God, but they seem like nice people. And so how are we supposed to take, but Prabhupada is literally saying here very straightforward that a godless person is without a doubt always greedy, angry, and fraudulent. And I'm sure some of us can probably even look at ourselves and say that we are embodying all of these symptoms. So really this statement must mean that unless one has full love of Godhead, then invariably they will have greed, anger, and fraudulence within their character to whatever degree. So very heavy statement by Prabhupada, and I believe it's very true. So he said, in regards to this point of godless men being invariably greedy, angry, and fraudulent, one who is not devoted to God is naturally full of these bad qualities. And there were two sections of the Bhagavatam that I had just pulled up that in this regard that also illustrate this point. So one section is in Canto 2, Shaunaka Rishi, he's speaking, and he says, Svavid vara hostra karai samstuta purusha pashu nayat karna pato peto jatu nama gadagraja. I'm sorry, let me just see. So this is a series of verses, and so he says these series of verses are Shaunaka Rishi explaining how the different aspects of a human that are not used in service of God are useless. So this verse, he says, men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. Next verse. One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of snakes and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. The upper portion of the body, though crowned with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti, freedom. And the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man, if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead, Hari. The eyes which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead Vishnu, his forms, names, quality, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of a peacock, and the legs which do not move to the holy places where the Lord is remembered are considered to be like tree trunks. Couple more verses. The person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of the tulsi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. Certainly that heart is steel framed, which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes and the hairs stand on end. So very, I don't know what the word is. I don't know if poignant is the right word, but very straightforward message here from Shaunaka Rishi saying how essentially the body of anyone who is not attempting to establish a relationship with God is useless, completely useless. He literally breaks down the different parts of the body and explains how each part of the body is useless of one who's not endeavoring to love God. And another section of Bhagavatam, the residents of Jambudvip, they speak this verse. Is a famous verse. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvair gunais tatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorate nasati bhavato bahi. Translation. All the demigods and their exalted qualities, such as religion, knowledge, and renunciation, become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. So all good qualities show up in the body of one who worships Krishna. On the other hand, a person devoid of devotional service and engaged in material activities has no good qualities. No good qualities. Even if he is adept at the practice of mystic yoga or the honest endeavor of maintaining his family and relatives, he must be driven by his own mental speculations and must engage in the service of the Lord's external energy. How can there be any good qualities in such a man? So this verse is very pertinent. Just exactly what Prabhupada is saying. Godless man is invariably greedy, angry, and fraudulent. So this verse is saying that a godless man is invariably consumed by Maya, and the natural standing of somebody who's under the influence of Maya is that they have these unwanted qualities. So very, very pertinent verses in this regard. So going back to our verse, by seeing the bad qualities come up, Yudhishthira Maharaj is naturally suspecting that the Lord must have left this planet. He had once suspected the disappearance of the Lord. And just one final point that I wanted to highlight there is this point that Prabhupada brings up about how the translation speaks of how, what is it? The people were adopting foul means of livelihood, and Prabhupada explains how this statement means that, let's say, for example, a Shudra is performing the responsibilities of a Brahmana, or a member of one rung of the caste system is performing the duties of a different rung of the caste system. That statement is very interesting to me, because in one sense, I also feel that at this stage of Kali Yuga, how many people can say that my duties are definitely the duties of a Brahmana or Kshatriya or Vaishya or Shudra? Most of us by this point are probably all results of the Varna Shankara, meaning that our constitution of what rung of the Varnashram system we fall into is probably very muddled. So it's very, and that's why, I think of myself as an example. When I went to school, I had no idea what I wanted to be, and even to this day, I'm still trying to figure out what is my occupation that would be fulfilling to me. But I'm sure many people can also relate to that. But the way that the caste system was set up previously was that your nature was very telling of what your duty should be. A Kshatriya's nature was very defined, a Vaishya's nature was very defined. But now we have so much mixture of natures that it's hard to say what our duty should really be. So anyway, that was one point that Prabhupada brought up in the purport. But the last statement that Prabhupada makes is how ignorance is the ultimate cause of all of these anomalies. He says, ignorance is the cause of all these anomalies in human society. And to remove this ignorance, especially in the age of degradation, the powerful sun is there to distribute light in the shape of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So ignorance is the ultimate cause of all of these anomalies. And ignorance of what? Naturally, he's speaking of ignorance of Krishna. And there's this famous verse in the 11th canto. It goes, Bayam dvitiya binivesha tasyad ishada petasya viparya yosmriti tanmaya yato buddha abhajetam bhaktyai kayesham gurudeva datma. Translation: fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. So this absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord is ignorance. When the living entity thus turns away from Supreme Lord, this is the manifestation of ignorance, he also forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya. Therefore, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and his very life and soul. So this verse is explaining the cause of fear, and you could extrapolate it to say the cause of fear, anger, greed, envy, pride. This is the cause, the ultimate cause of all of these unwanted qualities is ignorance of Krishna and our relationship with him. And this verse also gives the formula to reestablish that relationship, which is to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and to worship him as good as God, and to endeavor very sincerely to establish our relationship with Krishna. So I'll stop there. These are just a couple points that I wanted to highlight from the purport here. So if anybody has any comments, questions, most importantly, corrections, please let me know. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All Krishna Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you very much for a beautiful class, Prabhuji. All the nectarian verses that you pointed out to, very beautifully laid out. Prabhuji, one question, when you brought up these verses about, the good qualities in a person who is not practicing Krishna consciousness versus somebody who is practicing Krishna consciousness. um, then how do we interact with these people? Meaning, for a person who's not practicing Krishna consciousness, but they have all these good qualities, how should we correlate with them? Specifically, what's coming to my mind, or is, I think as part of the child protection program, we always say, positions of trust, meaning people keep faith in people in positions of trust, right? Meaning by default, they trust somebody who is religious, who is pious and whatnot. And Srimad Bhagavatam seems to be stating that you should trust these people. But there's a huge risk of, getting intruded or whatever, right? So how should one cautiously approach this versus, because Bhagavatam is kind of creating a bias here, right?
Yeah. But it's definitely creating a bias. And that's a really good question. One thought that was just, because, like you were saying, and like I was also saying, we definitely come across people who, what to speak of not being Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they may not even be Christian or Muslim. They may not be a worshiper of God in any sense. They may be self-proclaimed atheists, very openly, and yet they do have good qualities, and in some cases they probably manifest better qualities than ourselves in the form of like humanitarian services, or just doing good for others. And I don't think that we should disregard that. It's, first of all, a devotee respects all living entities. So right there, it doesn't matter where, ultimately it really doesn't matter where somebody's coming from. We should be working to respect them. But I think as devotees, and this is the Bhagavatam's message, that we shouldn't be illusioned. We should not trick ourselves into believing that I should look up to this person in every regard because they are manifesting whatever, good qualities, materially considered good qualities, because ultimately the most valuable quality is love of God. And the Bhagavatam is advocating for that. And the first verse of the Bhagavatam, speaking about throwing out all cheating religions, means that it's not, we should be very clear that what is considered the greatest quality of any living entity is their surrender to Krishna and to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I wish I had the ability to recall verses off the top of my head, but I'm sure that there are so many verses of Bhagavatam that back this idea. So I think we just have the responsibility of finding the balance between respecting people who have good qualities but are not worshipers of God, but maintaining a level of clarity that while this is a good person, they're not the ideal person, because they're missing the most important aspect that makes a soul complete. I don't know if that addresses prabhu, but that's just my thought.
I think you beautifully put it, Prabhuji. I think something that really struck me, what you pointed out, is we can appreciate them, but not necessarily in every regard, right? We're definitely not rejecting every piece of them, meaning we will definitely appreciate their good qualities, but doesn't mean that it'll make it holistic.
Right. Yeah. Good question, though. Yeah.
I was wondering if you can touch on the reverse too, meaning we may not see good qualities or certain aspects in a devotee, but
how do we Yeah. I mean, the reverse is also true, that even if a devotee has no good qualities, the one quality that makes them good, and in fact, factually in a better position than these other people, is the fact that they, let's say they chant Hare Krishna, and let's say they chant and that's the only thing that's good about them, right? The only visible, appreciable quality about them. From the absolute point of view, they are exemplary. And I feel like that's just like one of these like tough to swallow pills, where it's yeah, we it's that's the definition of their goodness, that they are endeavoring to establish a relationship with Krishna. And so it seems like in both of these situations, I think the best course of action that can be taken is just work to see the good in others, whether they are devotee or whether they're not a devotee. But just on an absolute level, even if a devotee is manifesting no good qualities, that we're calling them a devotee, so that means that there's something about them that is connecting them to Krishna in the form of maybe chanting or performing some type of worship, regular worship. So um, yeah, we just have to work to see the good qualities and understand that, especially because this person is doing some activity to connect them with Krishna, they're most exalted. And it will be theoretical for most of us, because we are not on a Uttama Adhikari platform of seeing everyone equally. But that is the aspiration.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking
Thank
two
you.
questions.
Thanks for the question. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Any other comments or questions? Okay. I think we can stop there then. Thank you all for joining. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.